Hello AmericansChannel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
Man thought his dog ran away, then finds him with this note on his collar. Mark had been searching for his missing dog for weeks. The beloved pet had vanished without a clue, leaving Mark heartbroken. He covered the town with posters, contacted every animal shelter he could find, and even placed an ad in the local paper. Despite all his efforts, there was no sign of his furry friend, and Mark couldn't shake the sadness that followed him everywhere he went. One sunny afternoon, Mark decided to take a walk in the park, hoping the fresh air might lift his spirits. As he strolled along the winding path, he heard a familiar bark in the distance. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Mark quickened his pace, following the sound. He rounded a corner, and there, playing fetch with a little girl, was a dog that looked just like his. The dog turned and saw Mark. Its tail began to wag furiously. "Buddy?" Mark called out, his voice trembling with hope. The dog's ears perked up at the sound of its name. In a flash, it was bounding towards Mark, barking happily. Mark knelt down, arms outstretched, as Buddy leaped into his embrace. Tears of joy streamed down Mark's face as he hugged his long-lost friend. The girl came running over, smiling at the heartwarming reunion. "Is this your dog, mister?" she asked. Mark looked up, still cradling Buddy in his arms. "Yes, I think so. I've been searching for him for weeks. Where did you find him?" The girl's smile faded a little. "Actually, this is my dog, Biscuit. We just adopted him from the shelter a few days ago." Mark's heart sank as he took a closer look at the dog. Sure enough, upon closer inspection, he realized this wasn't Buddy after all. The markings were similar, but the eyes were a different color. Mark sighed and gently set the dog down. "I'm so sorry," he said to the girl. "I thought for a moment he might be my missing dog. They look so alike." The girl gave an understanding nod. As Mark stood up, the girl's face brightened. "You know, mister, when we adopted Biscuit, the shelter said he was found with another dog that looked just like him. They were brought in together as strays." Mark's heart leaped. "Really? Do you remember anything else about the other dog?" The girl scrunched up her face, thinking hard. "I think they said the other dog had a red collar with a silver tag, and he was a bit bigger than Biscuit." A red collar with a silver tag? That sounded just like Buddy's collar. A spark of hope reignited in Mark's chest. "That's got to be my dog. Can you tell me which shelter you adopted Biscuit from?" The girl nodded. "It's the Sunnyvale Animal Rescue, just a few blocks from here." Mark thanked the girl profusely and gave Biscuit one last pat before hurrying off towards the Sunnyvale Animal Rescue, his heart pounding with anticipation. When he arrived, he burst through the doors and approached the front desk, barely able to contain his excitement. "Hello," he said to the woman behind the counter. "I think you might have my dog here. He's been missing for weeks," he told her, looking anxiously. The woman smiled kindly. "Well, let's take a look, shall we? Can you describe your dog for me?" Mark provided a detailed description of Buddy, right down to the red collar with the silver tag. The woman nodded, recognition dawning on her face. "Ah, yes, I remember that pair. They were quite the dynamic duo." "Let me check our records." She typed something into her computer and scanned the screen. Suddenly, her expression fell. "Oh dear," she said softly. "I'm afraid I have some bad news." Mark's heart dropped. "What is it? Is Buddy okay?" The woman sighed. "According to our records, your dog was indeed here, but unfortunately he escaped from our facility a few days ago. We've been searching for him, but so far we haven't had any luck." Mark felt like he had been punched in the gut. So close and yet still so far. Buddy had been right here, and now he was gone again. The woman reached out and patted his hand comfortingly. "Don't give up hope," she said. "We'll keep looking, and we'll let you know the moment we find any trace of him. In the meantime, perhaps you could put up some more posters around this neighborhood, in case someone spots him nearby." Mark nodded, fighting back tears. He thanked the woman for her help and turned to leave, feeling more lost than ever. As he stepped out into the sunlight, he took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He couldn't give up now. Not when he had been so close. He spent the next few hours canvassing the neighborhood around the shelter, putting up fresh posters with Buddy's picture. He talked to everyone he met, asking if they had seen a dog matching Buddy's description, but as the day wore on and the sun began to set, there was still no sign of his faithful companion. Exhausted and disheartened, Mark finally made his way home. He slumped onto his couch, burying his face in his hands. The house felt so empty without Buddy's cheerful presence. Mark wondered if he would ever see his beloved dog again. Just as he was about to give in to despair, His phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hesitantly, he answered. "Hello? Is this Mark?" a woman's voice asked. "The one looking for the missing dog, Buddy?" Mark sat up straight, his heart racing. "Yes, that's me. Do you have news about Buddy?" The woman on the other end laughed softly. "I think I might. There's a dog that looks just like the one on your poster sleeping on my front porch right now. He has a red collar with a silver tag, just like you described." Mark leapt to his feet, hardly daring to believe it. "Really? Oh my gosh, that has to be him. Can you give me your address? I'll be right there." He jotted down the address the woman provided, thanking her profusely. As he grabbed his keys and raced out the door, his heart soared with renewed hope. Could this really be it? After all this time, could he finally be reunited with Buddy? The drive to the woman's house seemed to take an eternity, but at last, Mark pulled up in front of a cozy-looking bungalow. And there, curled up on the welcome mat, was a very familiar furry form. "Buddy," Mark called out, his voice shaking. At the sound of his name, the dog's head popped up. For a moment, he looked confused. Then, with a joyful bark, he bounded towards Mark, tail wagging furiously. This time, there was no doubt. As Mark gathered Buddy into his arms, laughing and crying all at once, he knew he had found his dog at last. Buddy licked his face, whining happily as if to say, "I missed you too." Mark held Buddy close, hardly believing this moment was real after weeks of desperate searching. The woman who had called him smiled from her doorway. "He just wandered into my yard this afternoon," she explained. "I recognized him from your posters right away. Looks like he's been through quite an adventure." Mark nodded, stroking Buddy's fur. "We both have. I can't thank you enough for calling me." The woman waved off his thanks. "I'm just glad he's back where he belongs. You two take care now." With one last grateful nod, Mark led Buddy back to his car. As he opened the passenger side door for the dog to hop in, something caught Mark's eye. A small scrap of paper wedged underneath Buddy's collar. Frowning, Mark gently pulled it free. It appeared to be a tightly folded note. Mark unfolded the mysterious paper with trembling fingers and began to read the hastily scrawled words. His eyes widened as he took in the message, a chill running down his spine. The note was brief, but its contents filled Mark with a sense of dread and anger. He crumpled the paper in his fist, his mind racing. Who could have written this? And what did it mean for him and Buddy? Mark glanced down at his loyal dog, who gazed back at him with trusting eyes, blissfully unaware of the ominous message hidden on his collar. Mark knew one thing for sure: their ordeal was far from over. They had been through too much to let anyone or anything tear them apart again. Mark climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine with a determined set to his jaw. As Mark drove home, Buddy dozed contentedly in the passenger seat, exhausted from his long adventure. But Mark's mind was far from peaceful. He couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious note and its chilling implications. Who could have taken Buddy? And why would someone do this? At a red light, Mark smoothed out the crumpled paper on the steering wheel and read the words once more. "You thought you could hide, but we found you. We took your dog as a warning. Leave town now, or next time we'll take something far more precious. You can't escape your past forever." A cold sweat broke out on Mark's brow. He thought he had left his old life behind, but it seemed his dark secrets had finally caught up with him. He glanced over at Buddy, a fierce protectiveness welling up inside him. No one was going to hurt his dog. The light turned green and Mark accelerated, his mind spinning. He had to keep Buddy safe, but he also needed to know who was behind this threat, and he needed to do it without putting anyone else in danger. As he pulled into his driveway, a sudden realization hit him. There was only one person who might have the answers he sought: his old partner, Jack. Jack had helped him disappear all those years ago. It looked like Mark would have to confront his past after all in order to protect his future. Buddy stirred and yawned as the car came to a stop. Mark reached over and ruffled the dog's fur, his resolve hardening. "Looks like we've got some unfinished business, old buddy," he murmured. "But don't worry, I won't let anything happen to you, not this time." Mark and Buddy settled in at home, but Mark couldn't feel at ease. The note weighed heavily on his mind. He knew he needed to act to keep Buddy safe and uncover who was behind this. With a heavy heart, Mark made the call he had been dreading. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Jack, it's Mark. I need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mark, I thought you were long gone. What's going on?" Mark took a deep breath and explained the situation: Buddy's disappearance, the mysterious note, the threats. Jack listened intently, his concern growing with every word. "This is serious, Mark. Whoever did this knows about your past and isn't afraid to use it against you." Mark ran a hand through his hair. "I know, Jack, but I can't just leave. I have a life here now." Jack sighed. "I understand. Listen, give me a day to make some discreet inquiries. I still have a few contacts from the old days who might be able to shed some light on this. In the meantime, don't let Buddy out of your sight." Mark agreed, thanking Jack for his help before hanging up. True to his word, Jack called back the following evening. "Mark, I think I might have a lead. Do you remember the Russo case?" Mark's blood ran cold. The Russo case had been the one that forced him to go into hiding in the first place. A powerful crime family, a web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of law enforcement. It had all been too much. "What about it?" Mark asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Mark could hear hesitating in the sigh Jack let out. "Jocelyn Russo was released from prison 2 weeks ago," Jack said grimly. "My sources tell me she's been asking around about you, trying to track you down." Mark's grip tightened on the phone. Jocelyn Russo, the youngest daughter of the notorious crime family, she had sworn revenge on Mark for his role in bringing down her father's empire. If she was behind Buddy's abduction, then the threat was very real indeed. "What do I do, Jack?" Mark asked, his voice strained. "I can't just run again. I won't let her control my life like this." Jack responded that he understood. "And we're not going to let that happen. I have an idea, but it's risky." Jack paused. "We need to draw her out, get her to show her hand. And the best way to do that is to make her think she's got the upper hand." Mark frowned and asked what Jack suggested. "Let it slip that you're planning to leave town. Just like the note demanded. Make it seem like you're scared, that you're giving in to her threats. If Jocelyn thinks she's won, she might get careless." Mark wasn't entirely convinced. "And then what?" With a hint of steel in his voice, Jack said, "Then we set a trap. We choose the time and place to confront her." Mark was silent for a long moment, considering the plan. It was a gamble, no doubt about it, but what choice did he have? He couldn't spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, waiting for Jocelyn to strike. "All right," Mark said at last, his voice heavy with resignation. "Let's do it. But Jack, I need you to promise me something. If anything goes wrong, promise me that you'll take care of Buddy." Jack's voice softened. "Of course, Mark. I promise. But it won't come to that. We're going to end this, once and for all." Over the next few days, Mark carefully laid the groundwork for their plan. He made a show of packing boxes, canceling his newspaper subscription, and even put his house on the market. All the while, he kept Buddy close, refusing to let the dog out of his sight. As the day of their planned confrontation approached, Mark's anxiety reached a fever pitch. He paced his living room, running through every possible scenario in his mind. Buddy watched him from his bed, whining softly as if sensing his owner's distress. "It's okay, boy," Mark murmured, pausing to scratch behind Buddy's ears. "We're going to be all right." But the night before the planned confrontation, Mark changed his mind. Mark picked up his phone, his finger hovering over Jack's number. He took a deep breath and typed out a message. "Change of plans, I'm handling this alone. Thank you for everything, old friend." He hit send before he could change his mind. Moments later, his phone buzzed with Jack's reply. "Mark, don't do this. We're stronger together." But Mark's mind was made up. He turned off his phone and looked at Buddy. Mark's first challenge was finding Jocelyn's address. Remembering Jack's stories about accessing confidential records, Mark decided to use Jack's police login credentials. It was a bold move, but Mark felt he had no choice. Typing in Jack's username and password from years ago, he was amazed to find out the login was successful. How was it possible that he hadn't changed his password in so long? The address on file led Mark to a modest house on the outskirts of the city. It didn't scream Russo crime family, but he wasn't taking any chances. Packing a small bag with essentials, Mark prepared for a stakeout. He left Buddy at a trusted friend's house, not wanting to risk his safety. As he drove toward Jocelyn's residence, Mark's mind raced with what he might find. For 3 days, Mark watched Jocelyn's house from his car parked down the street. He observed her coming and going, noting her routines and the people she interacted with. But nothing seemed out of the ordinary. No suspicious visitors, no signs of criminal activity. Just a woman trying to rebuild her life after prison. On the 4th day, Mark made a decision. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to confront Jocelyn and get answers. His heart pounding, he walked up to her front door and rang the bell. As he waited, he rehearsed what he would say. The door opened, and there she stood. Jocelyn Russo looked older than Mark remembered, her once dark hair now streaked with gray. Her eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed with suspicion. "Mark Willenberg?" she said, her voice a mix of surprise and wariness. "What are you doing here?" Mark took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation. "We need to talk, Jocelyn," he said firmly. "About Buddy, about the note, about everything. I want answers and I want them now." Jocelyn's brow furrowed in confusion. "Buddy? Note? What are you talking about?" She glanced over her shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone else was listening. "You'd better come inside," she said finally, stepping back to let him in. Mark hesitated for a moment before stepping over the threshold. He scanned the interior of Jocelyn's home, half expecting to see henchmen lurking in the shadows, but the house seemed ordinary, family photos on the walls, a vase of fresh flowers on a side table. Jocelyn led him to a small living room and gestured for him to sit. "Now," she said, settling into an armchair across from him. "What's this about a dog and a note?" Mark studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. "My dog, Buddy, was kidnapped a few weeks ago. When I finally got him back, there was a threatening note hidden in his collar, a note that made it clear someone knew about my past and wanted me gone." Jocelyn's eyes widened. "And you think I had something to do with this?" Mark looked at her suspiciously. "You swore revenge on me, and now this happens?" Jocelyn leaned back in her chair, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Oh, Mark, is that what you think? That I've spent the last decade plotting my revenge against you?" She stood up abruptly and walked to a nearby bookshelf, pulling down a photo album. She flipped it open and thrust it at Mark. "Look," she commanded. Mark looked down at the pages filled with photos of Jocelyn with various people, mostly women and children. "What is this?" Mark asked, confused. "That," Jocelyn said, her voice softening, "is how I've spent my time in prison. I started a program to help inmates' children connect with their mothers through gardening. It gave me purpose, helped me heal." She sat back down, her eyes meeting Mark's. "I'm not the same person I was back then, Mark. I've changed. The last thing I want is to dredge up the past or seek revenge." Mark felt his certainty wavering. Could he have been wrong about Jocelyn? But if she wasn't behind Buddy's kidnapping and the threatening note, then who was? "I believe you," Mark said slowly, "but if you're not responsible, then we have a bigger problem. Someone out there knows about my past and is trying to intimidate me, and I have no idea who it could be." Jocelyn leaned forward. "Tell me everything," she said. As Mark recounted the details of Buddy's disappearance and return, along with the contents of the threatening note, Jocelyn listened intently. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment, deep in thought. "You know," she said finally, "this doesn't sound like the work of my family or anyone from our old circles. My family has done some terrible things, but we would never harm animals." Mark could sense she was telling the truth. Mark felt a mix of relief and frustration. If Jocelyn wasn't behind this, he was back to square one. "So, if it's not you or your family, who could it be?" he asked, more to himself than to Jocelyn. She leaned back, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You said the note mentioned your past. Is there anyone else from those days who might hold a grudge?" Mark shook his head. "I've been racking my brain, but I can't think of anyone. Most of the people involved in the Russo case are either still in prison or..." He trailed off, not wanting to finish the thought. Jocelyn nodded grimly, understanding the implication. He could see that she was doing his best to help him out. Suddenly, her eyes widened. "Wait a minute. What about your old partner? Jack, wasn't it?" Mark stared at Jocelyn in disbelief. "Jack? No, that's impossible. He's been helping me try to figure this out. He's the one who told me you might be behind it." Jocelyn raised an eyebrow. "Did he now? And did it occur to you that by pointing the finger at me, he was diverting suspicion from himself?" Mark opened his mouth to protest, but found himself hesitating. Could Jack really be behind all this? It seemed unthinkable, and yet... "Think about it," Jocelyn pressed. "Who else knows enough about your past to make those threats? Who would have the resources to pull off something like this? And who stands to benefit if you leave town in a hurry?" Mark's mind was reeling. He thought back to how easily he had accessed Jack's police login, the fact that Jack had known exactly where to find information about Jocelyn's release from prison. "But why?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would Jack do this?" Jocelyn shrugged. "I don't know, maybe he's in some kind of trouble and needs you gone. Maybe he's worried you'll expose something from your shared past, or maybe he just got tired of keeping your secrets all these years." Mark stood up abruptly, his head spinning. "I need to go. I need to think." Jocelyn nodded, understanding in her eyes. Be careful, Mark. If I'm right about this, Jack's not going to be happy that you came to see me. As Mark drove home, his thoughts were in turmoil. Could his oldest friend really have betrayed him like this? And if so, what was he supposed to do now? One thing was certain, he couldn't confront Jack directly, not until he knew for sure. When he arrived home, Mark went straight to his computer. After searching for a couple of hours, Mark couldn't find anything that would connect Jack to what happened to Buddy. He also recognized Jack's handwritten, which was not on the letter around Buddy's neck. He gave up the online search and decided to call Jack. Mark's fingers hovered over his phone, hesitating before dialing Jack's number. His mind raced with doubts and questions. After 3 rings, Jack's familiar voice answered. Mark, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days. Mark took a deep breath. Jack, we need to talk. In person, can you meet me? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sure, of course. Is everything okay? Mark replied honestly. I'm not sure, just meet me at the old fishing spot in an hour. Mark arrived early, scanning the area to be sure. The secluded spot by the river had been their go-to meeting place years ago when they were partners working undercover. As he waited, Mark ran through possible scenarios in his head, still unsure if he was about to confront a friend or an enemy. He heard footsteps approaching and turned to see Jack walking towards him, concern etched on his face. All right, Mark, what's going on? You're starting to worry me. Mark studied Jack's expression, searching for any hint of deception. I went to see Jocelyn Russo, he said bluntly, watching for Jack's reaction. Jack's eyes widened in surprise. You did what? Mark, that was incredibly dangerous. Why would you? Mark interrupted him. Because I needed answers, and I got them, just not the ones I was expecting. He proceeded to tell Jack about his conversation with Jocelyn, watching his old friend's face as he spoke. So you think I'm behind all this? Jack finally asked in surprise. Mark shrugged. You have to admit, Jack, it makes a certain kind of sense. You're one of the few people who knows enough to make those threats believable. Jack sighed, but spoke with confidence. Mark, listen to me. I swear to you, I had nothing to do with what happened to Buddy or that note. I've been trying to help you, not hurt you. Then prove it, Mark challenged. Tell me why I should believe you. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Because of this, he said, handing it to Mark. I was going to show you once we dealt with the Jocelyn situation, but I guess now is as good a time as any. Mark unfolded the paper, his eyes widening as he read its contents. It was a police report dated just a few weeks before Buddy's disappearance. The report detailed a break-in at the records department where files related to the Russo case were stored. Mark looked confused, looking at his old partner's face for answers. Jack spoke in a soft and relaxed voice, but he could see the aging lines better than ever, expressing tension and worry. Someone has been digging into our past and present, Mark. That night, as Mark sat on his couch with Buddy as company, he contemplated everything that happened. There was no way to make anything of it, as he had been out of the game for years. Someone had information on him, but who could it be? The moment Mark wanted to go to bed, his cell phone rang. Mark picked it up, answered the call, and immediately stiffened. A robotic voice spoke. We know you've been digging, the robotic voice intoned. Stop now, or there will be consequences. Mark's grip tightened on the phone. Who is this? He demanded, but the line went dead. Heart pounding, Mark stared at the silent device in his hand. The voice had been digitally altered, impossible to identify, but the message was clear. Whoever was behind this knew he was investigating. Mark's mind raced. Should he heed the warning and back off? He glanced at Buddy, peacefully snoozing on the rug. No, he couldn't give up now. He had to protect his new life, his beloved pet. With trembling fingers, Mark dialed Jack's number. When his old partner answered, Mark spoke in a hushed, urgent tone. Jack, I just got a call. A warning. Whoever's behind this is getting nervous. There was a pause before Jack replied, his voice grim. Then we need to move fast. What do you mean move fast? Mark asked, his heart racing. Jack's voice was low and urgent. If they're making threats, it means we're getting close. We need to act before they do something drastic. Mark glanced at Buddy, still sleeping peacefully. What's our next move? Meet me at the old warehouse on Avalanche Boulevard Street in about 20 minutes, Jack said. Come alone. We can't risk anyone else getting involved. Mark hesitated. The old warehouse had been a frequent meeting spot during their undercover days. It was isolated, perfect for clandestine meetings, but it was also the perfect place for an ambush. Jack, I don't know, but Jack interrupted him. Trust me, like old times, remember? After a moment's hesitation, Mark agreed. He hung up and looked at Buddy, torn between bringing him along for safety and leaving him behind to protect him. Mark decided to leave Buddy at home, not wanting to risk his safety. He scratched behind the dog's ears, whispering, "I'll be back soon, Buddy. Stay safe." With a heavy heart, he grabbed his keys and headed out into the night. The drive to the warehouse was tense. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat. Mark's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he pulled up to the abandoned building. He scanned the area, looking for any sign of Jack or anyone else. The place appeared deserted. Taking a deep breath, Mark stepped out of his car. The crunch of gravel under his feet seemed deafening in the quiet night. He approached the warehouse cautiously, every sense on high alert. As he reached for the rusted door handle, a voice called out from the darkness. "Hands where I can see them, Mark." Mark froze, his blood running cold. He knew that voice. It wasn't Jack's. Slowly, he raised his hands and turned around. A figure emerged from the shadows, pointing something at Mark's chest. As the person stepped into the dim light cast by a distant street lamp, Mark's eyes widened in shock. "Detective Rodriguez?" he gasped. The woman before him had been a rookie cop when Mark and Jack were working the Russo case. Now she looked older, harder, her eyes cold as she kept her hands steady. "Long time no see, Willenberg," Rodriguez said, her voice laced with bitterness. "Bet you never thought you'd see me again, did you?" Mark's mind raced. "What is this about, Rodriguez? Where's Jack?" A harsh laugh escaped her lips. "Jack's not coming. This little reunion is just for us." As Mark stood there, he realized that he had walked right into a trap. "What do you want, Rodriguez?" Mark asked, trying to keep his voice steady. His eyes darted around, looking for an escape route, but Rodriguez had him cornered. "Justice," she spat. "You and Jack, you took everything from me. My career, my reputation, my life." Mark's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about? We never did anything to you." Rodriguez's laugh was bitter. "Oh, really? You don't remember framing me as the leak in the Russo case?" The pieces suddenly clicked into place in Mark's mind. During the Russo investigation, there had been a mole in the department feeding information to the crime family. He and Jack had discovered it was Rodriguez, but she'd disappeared before they could arrest her. At least, that's what he'd always believed. "Rodriguez, we didn't frame you. You were the leak." "We had proof," Mark said carefully. "Lies," she shouted, while her hands started to tremble out of frustration. "I was innocent, but you needed a scapegoat, so you chose the rookie, the one with no connections or power to fight back." Mark's mind raced. If Rodriguez truly believed she'd been framed, it would explain her vendetta against him. The kidnapping of Buddy, the threatening notes, it had all been her doing. "So what now?" Mark asked, trying to buy time. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. "Now? You're going to confess to everything. The frame job, the cover-up, all of it. And then you're going to turn yourself in?" Mark's heart pounded. He knew he couldn't confess to something he hadn't done, but he also couldn't risk antagonizing Rodriguez while she had a gun pointed at him. "Look, Rodriguez, I think there's been a misunderstanding. If you just calm down, we can talk about this." But she got even more infuriated, her eyes gleaming with hatred. "No more talk," Rodriguez shouted. "I've waited years for this moment. You're going to pay for what you did to me." Just as Mark thought his luck had run out, a new voice cut through the tension. "NYPD, get on the floor." Rodriguez whirled around to see Jack emerge from the shadows. "It's over, Rodriguez," Jack said calmly. "We know everything." Rodriguez's eyes darted between Jack and Mark. "You don't know anything," she snarled. "We know you were the real leak in the Russo case," Jack continued. "We found the evidence you thought you'd destroyed. Your offshore accounts, the burner phones, all of it." Mark watched as the color drained from Rodriguez's face. "That's impossible," she whispered. "It's over," Jack repeated. Then something happened that Mark did not expect. Rodriguez fell to her knees and tears started streaming down her face. "I had to," she whispered while sobbing. Mark looked at her in surprise, exchanging looks with Jack, who was also clearly taken by surprise. What was she talking about? Why did she have to be the leak? Rodriguez looked up him and seemed to read the questions off his face. "It was because of Jocelyn Russo," she said. Mark and Jack looked at each other in shock. Was Jocelyn in on it? Was she still part of the threats to Buddy? "Years ago, she approached me out of the blue," Rodriguez began explaining. "She was devastated by what her family did to the town and wanted it to stop. She needed someone inside the police force to help make this happen. If I hadn't played both sides, she probably would not be alive today." Mark felt like he couldn't move a muscle. This was not at all what he had expected. Judging by the look on Jack's face, he didn't either. Mark's mind reeled as he tried to process this new information. So, Jocelyn was working against her own family? And you were helping her? Rodriguez nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and defiance. Mark could see the remorse, but there were so many questions rattling in his brain. We were trying to bring down the Russo Empire from the inside. But when you two started getting close to uncovering the truth, Jocelyn panicked. She told me to disappear, to take the fall. She wanted to protect me. Jack contemplated for a while, his brow furrowed in confusion. But why come after Mark now? Why the threats, the dog kidnapping? Rodriguez's face hardened. Because I lost everything, my career, my life, my money. I wanted to blackmail you out of some cash at least. Mark took a cautious step forward. Rodriguez, I understand you've been through hell, but this isn't the way to make things right. We can still fix this. Tell the truth about what really happened. Rodriguez laughed bitterly. And who's going to believe me now? A disgraced cop who's been in hiding for years? For the first time, Mark actually started to feel sorry for her. He took a cautious step towards her. Mark took another careful step towards Rodriguez, his hand still raised. We'll believe you, he said softly. Jack and I will back up your story. We can make this right. Rodriguez's eyes darted between Mark and Jack, uncertainty clear on her face. Why would you do that for me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because it's the right thing to do, said Jack. We all made mistakes back then. It's time we fixed them. Mark nodded in agreement. I think we should go to Jocelyn first, he said. Rodriguez's eyes shifted quickly in confusion. We can't go there. It might be dangerous. Who knows what she's up to these days? At this, Mark let out a gentle laugh. That's what I thought too, but I might have been mistaken about her, he said, smiling at Rodriguez. He could tell she still wasn't convinced. Mark took a deep breath and explained his recent encounter with Jocelyn, detailing how she had changed and was now running programs to help inmates' children. Rodriguez listened, her expression shifting from disbelief to cautious hope. So she's really turned her life around? She asked, her voice wavering slightly. It seems so, Mark replied, and I think she'd want to help set the record straight about what really happened back then. Jack nodded in agreement. We can all go together, safety in numbers, right? Rodriguez hesitated for a moment longer. Okay, she said quietly, let's do it. But if this is a trick, Mark quickly assured her, it's not. I promise you, it's not. The trio made their way to Jocelyn's house, tension thick in the air. As they approached her front door, Mark could see the apprehension on Rodriguez's face. He gave her a reassuring nod before ringing the doorbell. Jocelyn opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the group before her. Mark, what's going on? Her gaze landed on Rodriguez and recognition dawned on her face. Oh my God, Sarah? Rodriguez stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes. Jocelyn, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Everyone stood there waiting for a response. Then Jocelyn pulled Rodriguez into a tight embrace, both women overcome with emotion. It's okay, Jocelyn whispered. It's all okay now. As the night wore on, the truth came out. Jocelyn confirmed Rodriguez's story, explaining how they had worked together to bring down the Russo family from within. She expressed deep regret for asking Rodriguez to take the fall and disappear, saying she had spent years trying to find her to make things right. As the sun rose over the city, Mark, Jack, Rodriguez, and Jocelyn sat around Jocelyn's kitchen table, exhausted but determined. They had spent the entire night piecing together the truth and formulating a plan to set things right. So, what's our first move? Mark asked, rubbing his tired eyes. Jack leaned forward, his expression serious. We need to gather all the evidence we can. Jocelyn, do you still have any records from back then? Jocelyn nodded slowly. I kept a journal, detailed everything that happened. It's hidden in a safety deposit box. I never thought I'd have a reason to use it. Rodriguez still sounded like she wasn't sure, but said, That's a start. But we'll need more. Official records, witness statements. Mark's mind raced. What about the original case files? There might be something there that we missed before, now that we know the full story. Jack shook his head. Those files were sealed after the trial. It won't be easy to access them. Then Jocelyn stepped in and said, I might be able to help with that. I still have some connections in the DA's office, people who owe me favors. As they continued to plan, Mark felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. They were about to unravel years of secrets, lies, and who knows what else. We need to be careful, he cautioned. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. No cutting corners, no half-truths, everything out in the open. The others nodded in agreement. As they finalized their strategy, Mark couldn't help but think of Buddy. In a strange way, his loyal companion had been the catalyst for all of this. If Buddy hadn't gone missing, none of this would have come to light. When they finally managed to send in an appeal to clear Rodriguez's name, they met unlikely resistance from someone in the police force. As they waited for news on the appeal, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Their carefully gathered evidence and testimonies should have been enough to at least warrant a serious review of Rodriguez's case. Yet they were met with bureaucratic roadblocks at every turn. One afternoon, as Mark was leaving the courthouse after another frustrating meeting, he noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Detective Thompson, a veteran officer who had been on the force during the Russo case. The man's eyes widened in recognition before he quickly turned away, disappearing into the throng of people. Mark's instincts kicked in. He followed Thompson at a distance, watching as the older man made a series of phone calls. When Thompson finally stopped at a small cafe, Mark took a seat at a nearby table, straining to overhear the conversation. "Can't let this go through," Thompson was saying in a low, urgent voice. "If Rodriguez's name gets cleared, it'll open up a whole can of worms. We'll all go down." Mark's heart raced. Will all go down? Who else was involved? He leaned in closer, trying to catch more of the conversation. He quickly reached in his pocket, took out his phone, and started recording the conversation. All the while, he tried to get closer to Thompson in order to get a better recording. This had to be his chance to make a difference. As Mark edged closer to Thompson's table, his heart pounding, he strained to catch every word of the conversation. "Listen," Thompson hissed into his phone. "We need to shut this down, now. If Rodriguez talks, it's not just us. Half the department could go down." Mark's eyes widened. The corruption ran deeper than they had imagined. He glanced at his phone, making sure it was still recording. "I don't care what it takes," Thompson continued. "Bribe the judge if you have to. Just make sure this appeal goes nowhere. That's it." Mark realized that this was the holy grail to crack the case. Mark returned to the group with the recording, playing it for Jack, Rodriguez, and Jocelyn. The damning evidence shocked them all. Jack quickly contacted a trusted ally in internal affairs, Officer Daniels, who had been quietly investigating corruption in the department. Daniels agreed to meet the group at a secure location, promising to use the recording to launch a full investigation. Mark felt a surge of hope. Justice was finally within reach. Officer Daniels acted swiftly, presenting the recording to a judge with enough integrity to resist bribes. Warrants were issued and arrests followed. Detective Thompson and several others from the old department were taken into custody. The truth about the corruption surrounding the Russo case came to light, and Rodriguez's name was officially cleared. At long last, she was free to rebuild her life without the shadow of disgrace looming over her. With her name restored, Rodriguez found a new purpose in helping others. She partnered with Jocelyn to expand the inmate children's gardening program, which grew into a nationwide initiative. Mark and Jack supported her efforts, feeling a sense of pride in their small roles in making amends for the past. Rodriguez found peace in her work, finally able to move forward from the pain and bitterness that had consumed her for so long. Mark, Jack, and Buddy settled into a quieter life after the chaos. Buddy became a symbol of resilience and loyalty, his presence a reminder of the ordeal that had brought long-buried truths to light. Mark found himself grateful for the journey, as difficult as it had been. It gave him the opportunity to not only confront his past, but also forge deeper connections with the people who mattered most. Years later, the group gathered at Jocelyn's home to celebrate the anniversary of the gardening initiative. Laughter and warmth filled the air as children played among the flowers, their joy a testament to how far they had all come. Mark looked around at the smiling faces and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What had begun as a search for his missing dog had grown into something much greater: redemption, justice, and a brighter future.